revealing forgotten echoes, a terrifying horror story. In the picturesque town of Oakwood, where towering evergreens swayed in the gentle breeze and mist hung low in the valleys, there stood a relic of a bygone era, the Montgomery Mansion. Once a symbol of wealth and prestige, it now lay abandoned and forgotten, its grandeur tarnished by the passage of time. Legend had it that the mansion held a dark secret, a tale of tragedy that had cast a shadow over the town for decades. Locals whispered of hauntings and restless spirits, warning each other to steer clear of its crumbling walls. But for Sarah Owens, a young woman with a thirst for adventure and a fascination with the supernatural, the mansion held an irresistible allure. On a stormy autumn evening, as thunder rumbled in the distance and rain lashed against the windows, Sarah found herself drawn to the mansion once again. Ignoring the warnings of her friends, she ventured into the darkness, the thrill of the unknown coursing through her veins. The mansion loomed before her, its once grand facade now a crumbling shell of its former self. Ivy crept up the walls like fingers reaching for the sky, and the windows were shattered, their glass shards glinting in the pale moonlight. Undeterred, Sarah pushed open the creaking gates and stepped into the overgrown garden. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and decay as Sarah made her way through the tangled foliage. The sound of her footsteps echoed eerily in the silence, sending a shiver down her spine. She knew she should turn back, that she was risking her safety by venturing into the abandoned mansion alone. But something compelled her to press on, to uncover the secrets that lay hidden within its walls. As she approached the imposing double doors of the mansion, Sarah's heart pounded in her chest. With trembling hands, she reached out and pushed the doors open, the rusty hinges groaning in protest. The interior of the mansion was cloaked in darkness, illuminated only by the faint glow of the moonlight filtering through the broken windows. Sarah took a tentative step forward, her senses on high alert. Every creak of the floorboards, every whisper of the wind seemed to echo in the empty halls. She felt as though she were being watched, as though unseen eyes were following her every move. But she pressed on, her curiosity outweighing her fear. She wandered through the maze-like corridors, her footsteps echoing of the walls like the tolling of a funeral bell. Every room she entered was empty, devoid of life or warmth. It was as though the mansion itself were holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. And then, as Sarah turned a corner and entered a grand ballroom, she felt a chill run down her spine. There, standing in the center of the room, was a spectral figure bathed in moonlight. Its form was translucent, its features blurred and indistinct. But there was no mistaking the sense of malevolence that emanated from it. Sarah froze in place, her heart hammering in her chest. She had heard tales of ghosts and hauntings, but she had never truly believed in them until now. The figure seemed to beckon her closer, its outstretched hand a silent invitation. With a trembling voice, Sarah spoke, her words barely audible above the howling wind. "Who are you? What do you want from me?" The figure made no reply, but its presence seemed to grow stronger, enveloping Sarah in a suffocating embrace. She could feel its icy touch against her skin, sending shivers down her spine. And then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the figure vanished, leaving Sarah alone in the darkness once more. She stood there for a moment, trying to catch her breath, trying to make sense of what had just happened. But the mansion offered no answers, only silence and shadows. With a sense of unease gnawing at her insides, Sarah turned and fled into the night, vowing never to return to the Montgomery mansion again. Little did she know that her encounter with the spectral figure was only the beginning of a journey that would lead her deep into the heart of darkness, where the horrors of the past lay waiting to be unleashed. In the days that followed her encounter with the spectral figure at the Montgomery mansion, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling of unease that lingered in the pit of her stomach. Try as she might to convince herself that it had all been a trick of the light, a figment of her imagination, she couldn't shake the memory of the ghostly presence that had seemed so real. Determined to uncover the truth behind the mansion's haunted reputation, Sarah delved into the town's history, scouring old newspapers and archives for any mention of the Montgomery family. What she discovered only deepened the mystery, painting a picture of intrigue and scandal that spanned generations. The Montgomerys had been one of the wealthiest families in Oakwood, their influence stretching far and wide. But beneath the facade of wealth and privilege lurked a dark secret, a secret that had torn the family apart and left a stain on their legacy. Decades ago, the Montgomery mansion had been home to the patriarch of the family, a man named Nathaniel Montgomery, and his wife, Eleanor. They had 2 children, a son named William and a daughter named Emily. William had been the heir apparent, groomed from a young age to inherit his father's fortune and carry on the family name. But it was Emily who had captured the hearts of the townsfolk, with her beauty and grace that seemed to shine like a beacon in the darkness. She was the golden child, beloved by all who knew her, including a young servant boy named Thomas. Thomas had come from humble beginnings, his family scraping by on the scraps that fell from the Montgomerys' table. But despite their differences in social status, Emily and Thomas had formed a bond that transcended the boundaries of class and privilege. They had grown up together, their friendship blossoming into something more as they reached adolescence. Their romance had been a closely guarded secret, hidden from the prying eyes of Nathaniel Montgomery and the rest of Oakwood's high society. But secrets have a way of being uncovered, and when Nathaniel discovered the truth about his daughter's forbidden love, he was consumed by rage. Determined to put an end to their romance once and for all, Nathaniel devised a plan to rid the mansion of Thomas and erase him from Emily's life forever. He framed Thomas for a crime he didn't commit, fabricating evidence and manipulating the town's law enforcement to ensure his swift arrest and conviction. Emily was devastated by the betrayal, her heart shattered into a million pieces. She pleaded with her father to spare Thomas's life, to show him mercy and forgiveness. But Nathaniel's heart was as cold as stone, his only concern the preservation of his family's reputation. And so Thomas was executed for a crime he didn't commit, his innocence lost to the cruel machinations of fate. Emily was left to mourn his passing, her spirit broken and her soul tormented by guilt and sorrow. As Sarah pieced together the fragments of the past, she felt a swell of anger and sadness wash over her. How could one man's greed and pride cause so much pain and suffering? How could Emily's cries for justice go unanswered for so long? Determined to right the wrongs of the past, Sarah vowed to help Emily find peace. With the help of her friends, she embarked on a quest to uncover evidence of Thomas's innocence, to prove once and for all that he had been wrongfully accused. Their journey took them to forgotten corners of the town, where they combed through dusty archives and interviewed elderly residents who still remembered the events of decades past. With each clue they uncovered, the truth became clearer, like pieces of a puzzle falling into place. But their quest was not without its challenges. Strange occurrences plagued them at every turn, warning them to abandon their search and leave the past buried where it belonged. Sarah and her friends were undeterred, their determination unwavering in the face of adversity. And then, just when they were on the brink of uncovering the final piece of the puzzle, disaster struck. Sarah's best friend, Jessica, disappeared without a trace, her fate shrouded in mystery. Desperate to find her friend and bring her home safely, Sarah redoubled her efforts, pushing herself to the brink of exhaustion in her quest for answers. But the answers she sought were elusive, slipping through her fingers like grains of sand. With each passing day, the darkness seemed to close in around her, threatening to consume her whole. And then, just when all hope seemed lost, a breakthrough came in the form of an old journal, discovered hidden beneath the floorboards of the Montgomery mansion. The journal belonged to Eleanor Montgomery, Nathaniel's wife, and it contained secrets that had long been buried with the dead. As Sarah pored over the pages of the journal, her heart pounding in her chest, she uncovered the truth about Thomas's innocence and Nathaniel's guilt. It was a truth that had been hidden for decades, a truth that could finally set Emily's spirit free. Armed with this newfound knowledge, Sarah and her friends prepared to confront the darkness that lurked within the mansion once and for all. Little did they know that their journey was far from over, and that the horrors of the past were about to resurface in ways they could never have imagined. With the weight of the truth heavy on their shoulders, Sarah and her friends gathered in the dimly lit chamber of the Montgomery mansion. The air was thick with anticipation as they prepared to confront the darkness that had haunted the mansion for decades. Sarah held Eleanor Montgomery's journal tightly in her hands, the pages filled with the damning evidence of Nathaniel's crimes. She knew that they were treading on dangerous ground, that the malevolent forces that lurked within the mansion would stop at nothing to protect their secrets. But she was determined to see justice served, to free Emily's spirit from the torment of the past. With a sense of purpose burning in her heart, she began to recite the ancient incantations that would banish the darkness once and for all. As she spoke the words, a sense of unease settled over the chamber, the air crackling with energy. Shadows danced on the walls, twisting and contorting into grotesque shapes. Sarah's friends huddled close, their eyes wide with fear, but they refused to abandon her in her hour of need. And then, as Sarah reached the climax of the incantation, a deafening roar filled the chamber, and the darkness surged forth with a vengeance. Sarah and her friends found themselves locked in a desperate battle against the malevolent forces that threatened to consume them whole. But Sarah refused to back down, her voice rising above the chaos as she called upon the power of the light to banish the darkness once and for all. With every ounce of strength she possessed, she pushed back against the tide of evil, her determination unwavering in the face of adversity. And then, just when it seemed as though all hope was lost, a miracle occurred. A blinding light filled the chamber, driving back the darkness and illuminating the room with its radiant glow. Sarah shielded her eyes from the glare, her heart pounding in her chest as she realized what was happening. Emily's spirit appeared before them, her form bathed in the light of the divine. Her eyes were filled with gratitude and sorrow as she looked upon Sarah and her friends, her voice a whisper on the wind. "Thank you," she said, her voice barely audible above the roar of the storm. "Thank you for freeing me from the chains of the past. I can finally rest in peace." And with those words, Emily's spirit vanished into the ether, leaving behind a sense of peace and tranquility that filled the chamber. Sarah and her friends breathed a sigh of relief, their hearts lightened by the knowledge that they had finally brought closure to the tormented souls trapped within the mansion's walls. As dawn broke over Oakwood, the mansion stood silent and still once more, its dark secrets laid bare for all to see. Sarah and her friends emerged from the chamber, their bond stronger than ever, their spirits lifted by the knowledge that they had faced the darkness and emerged victorious. And though the echoes of the past would always linger in the halls of the Montgomery mansion, they no longer held sway over the town of Oakwood. For Sarah Owens and her friends had confronted the darkness head-on, banishing it from their midst and paving the way for a brighter future. As they walked away from the mansion, their footsteps echoing in the stillness of the morning, Sarah knew that their journey was far from over. But with the memory of their triumph burning bright in her heart, she felt a sense of hope and optimism for the first time in years. For in the end, it was not the darkness that defined them, but the light that shone within their souls, guiding them on their journey and leading them toward a future filled with promise and possibility. And as long as that light burned bright, they knew that they would always be able to overcome whatever challenges lay ahead.